typically you visit a web page or website, and it has to load all of the styles for every single page that you're going to prospectively visit on the site. Your browser does cache that, and that does improve some speed as you go forward, because you've already got that CSS file loaded. However, when we talk about headless, now we can do modular, where we can do it where, let's say the page you go to has a banner and maybe a content section and a footer. Right? If that content section isn't on another page, then it's quite simple. The CSS just doesn't load, right? So it'll only load the CSS for the elements you actually see on the page. That's a really big deal, especially with larger websites with a lot of templates and a lot of different components. You could prospectively be loading a really large CSS file, where when we're talking about headless, that's no longer the case. You're only loading the CSS that you need. When people say, hey, my website's fast, you don't really know what that is until you see a headless site, right? The idea that there is zero load, that kind of a thing. I mean, you really are getting more for your money when it comes to headless. And I would also say, the other thing that people should understand about headless is that maintenance becomes a great deal easier. One of the biggest problems that you'll run into with a lot of agency environments is that you create this website and it looks wonderful, and you trust that agency to maintain that website and then perform good maintenance on it, and then it kind of sits there and it languishes, and then maybe there's a bunch of plugins if it's WordPress and they get out of date, and then things break, and then it's just this kind of big hot mess that you have to sift through, and it becomes spaghetti code really, really quick. One of the goals when we were originally kind of trying to pioneer headless was the idea that not only do we want a good user experience for the people that visit the site, and not only do we want a great user experience for the clients that might want to manage their own content, but we also wanted a really great developer experience, right? The idea that a developer can pop open the code of your website and immediately know what's going on, where to go to fix it, what to do to fix it, and be able to do that quickly. At the end of the day, yeah, are you going to pay a little bit more money probably for a headless website? Sure, right? Again, you get what you pay for, but the amount of money you're going to save on the back end through not having to have these continuous, frustrating, irritating maintenance problems that the traditional WordPress or traditional content management system website will always present is worth its weight in gold. You're going to save that money in the back end for sure, and it has much more longevity. Some of the things that separate us and make it unique is you'll hear a lot of talk when it comes to headless and when it comes to the way that they're put together about the API, right? Being able to send data from the said server environment where the content lives to the front end where we're rendering the page for the user. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. One of the most popular ways is called a REST API. And REST API has been around for a little while. We've gone through multiple iterations of it in different protocols. But at the end of the day, the problems you run into with REST API is that you aren't in as much control of the data that you get, right? So when you call a REST API, you're going to get a big data dump, and then you have to kind of sift through it and try and figure out what bits of data you actually want to display on your page. The problem is that's not terribly performant. You get that data whether you use it or not, and that takes real-world time in terms of page loads, in terms of all of that. So what we are using now is something that was originally pioneered by Facebook. It's called GraphQL. And what GraphQL does really, really well is that I can make a call for data and get only the data I need, and I can do it all in one call. Another thing that you'll run into a lot with REST APIs is that sometimes you have to make multiple calls to different endpoints to get all of the data. Then you have to take all that data, merge it together into something that you want to use, get rid of the crap data that you're not going to use, and then you serve it to the user. That's all happening in one function. That's all happening when you see that spinner on your browser going. That's what's taking place. With GraphQL, we make that one call, get only the data we want, and then we load only the data we want onto the page, and it's way more performant. We're also using a technology called Next.js, which is kind of the winner, I would say, in terms of the JavaScript framework wars that have been going on for the last 10 years or so. It's really wonderful. It's basically React, but it gives React superpowers and allows us to do a whole lot more that we couldn't have ever done before.